Now, by someone who's been following the case very carefully and closely. His name is John DePetro. He's with WRKO Radio, and he has interviewed some of Rachel Entwistle's friends. He has some fascinating insights, and of course, you've been following with your listeners, John, this case since it first broke days ago. Let me ask you this to start. We were just talking about family that might be present at the arraignment. I know I cannot ask you specifically about exactly who you've talked with on the Rachel Entwistle side of this case, but what kind of support do we expect to see for the victims in this case at the arraignment, or do we expect no presence at all at this early stage in the proceedings?
Jamie, you're going to find tremendous support. This was a girl that was well-loved. This was a girl that was perfect in every way, very, very close with her mother. And I expect that both her parents and maybe even her grandparents will be in court today to represent her. I think it's going to be very dramatic when her stepfather, Joe Matarazzo, eyes Neil Entwistle for the first time since this whole thing broke, and they obviously had conversations over the phone. But to give you an idea of the support, today the family announced that there was a memorial scholarship set up in her name and in her maiden name, Rachel Souza, for her former high school. So the family wants to make sure that she has a presence, that they will be there for her and Lillian, and I think it's going to be very dramatic when the eyes lock on Neil, and should he go back and, look back and look at his former father-in-law and former mother-in-law.
What have you been able to glean in your conversations? And again, not asking you to tell us anything that's confidential, breach any confidentialities, but in your conversations with the friends of Rachel Entwistle, what have you learned about the relationship between Rachel and her husband Neil in the early years, and any insights as to what they think? And I want to say again, we're in the early stages of this case. We're hearing things from prosecutors and police officers, not from defense attorneys at this point in time. But what is it that you're hearing that they think went on inside this relationship?
You know, it's interesting, Jamie. Obviously, the friends are horrified with everything that has come out about Neil. This is hardly the type of person that they picture someone like Rachel with. This was someone, she was a great student, a great athlete. She suffered tragedy. Rachel suffered tragedy early in her life when her father died, and yet, continued to be the type of daughter that everybody would want. But she was the smart girl. Rachel didn't date a lot. It's very sad. Her friends have told me that it's unfortunate, but Neil was like her first real love. And they met in kind of a romantic way. She went to college, they met abroad. They really didn't know each other that well, and then they got married and then lived in England. So as much as they wanted to be supportive, they're horrified at the fact that, of everyone she could have chosen, it's so tragic that this seemingly is the individual that Rachel chose to marry and even have a child with. And that said, Jamie, they are convinced. Now, I want to repeat, and you hit on something, there's no real evidence right now, but I know the police are anxious to try to find some evidence that the whole plot started to unwind and then he just collapsed under the pressure. Some of her friends and sources I've spoke to, they're convinced that things started to come to a head. Keep in mind that they had been living with her mother, so suddenly now you're in a new home. You have a lot of new expenses. They were buying furniture. Things are starting to add up. She was denied a purchase with the credit card, constantly fighting over expenses and questioning where's the money coming in. Her friends are convinced that she confronted him and that sent things spiraling in motion. But at this point, Jamie, there's no evidence to show that there was any type of confrontation like that.
John DePetro, you realized as you were talking, we're on the best defense, and if you didn't say it, I was going to say it. We're going to talk lots more about what evidence there is and what evidence there isn't at this point in the Entwistle case. This is live footage of Neil Entwistle making his approach to that courthouse for his arraignment. We're going to have lots more coverage and lots more of that live footage in just a moment.